Hey everybody, Coach here. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. It's going to be a little different. This week we're talking about the top 7 questions I and other forums have received regarding landscape problems. I am so glad you're here. I am indoors giving this to you today because it is 19 with a 15-mile-an-hour wind. And I love you guys and I like teaching, but I'm not standing out in that. So let's get started, shall we? Hey, this episode's coming to you the day after Thanksgiving, 2023, and I hope that all my listeners and viewers find this being a healthy, sane, and somewhat enjoyable holiday weekend. Now we head off into Christmas and all the chaos that goes with that, and then the new year, and here we are. So let's get into those top 7, shall we? I'm not going to do them in any particular order. I just wrote them down as I saw them. And we'll start off with question number 1. So which is better, poured concrete or stackable block pavers as far as driveways, walkways, and patios? It really kind of depends if you're doing it at a DIY level. If you have plenty of poured concrete experience, bam, that almost answers the question right there. But if you're a DIYer for the first time, the preparation and the labor intensity falls to the pavers, but the ease of getting it done with a really good looking project, pavers is going to be the DIYer's friend, unless you're really good at finishing concrete. Unless you're good at forming, screeding, and finishing that poured slab that you ordered up, the pavers, you know what it's going to look like. It's all in the prep when it comes to the pavers. Paver base, bedding layer, screeding, slope and leveling. Those are all DIY friendly type of things. You just have to read up on it and educate yourself on it. So as far as which one holds up best, if you've done the pavers correctly, walkways and patios go towards pavers. For driveways take an extensive amount of preparation. A compacted base layer of a good, clean, washed, 3/4 crushed type of gravel is going to need to be about 12 inches deep, at least 12 inches deep. And then you have your usual bedding layer, and then you have your pavers go down on it, and then your sand, your polymeric sand, or whatever you plan on using in between. But there's a lot of preparation. It's just like painting, just like retaining walls. That base is everything. So which one is easier? I'd have to go towards the pavers. You just have to pace yourself out. But if you're good at finishing concrete, man, knock that stuff out. Make sure you reinforce it. And if you're up in the northern climates, make sure you reinforce it just a little bit extra. And make sure you have drainage around it so you don't get water going down underneath it and you get thaw and heave coming up through the slab. And that also goes with your pavers as well. It's why we use a crushed stone the most, a clean crushed stone, so it doesn't harbor a lot of water there during freezing temperatures and then tend to start pushing up, because it'll push up either a slab and it can push up pavers as well. Okay, moving on. Question number 2. How do you know exactly how much water to give plants, whether it's in the ground or in the container? It's a real good question, and the best answer I can give for that is the plants will tell you. You can learn about the plants that you've purchased. You can learn about how much water they need, how much sun, how much shade. It'll really boil down to what kind of soils you're putting it into, how much good planting prep you've done, and then how much monitoring you do for that critical 30 to 90 days after you've put them in the ground. Most plants, and I say probably 90%, most plants want to be moist, but they don't want to be waterlogged. Containers especially, make sure you have drainage holes at the bottom of your containers. Do not try to put them in there without. All they're going to do is become a swampy bog and check out after about a half a year at the most. But as far as your heavy clay soils versus your sandy soils, heavy clay is going to require a bigger hole preparation dug out before you're planting. everything, whether it be sandy or clay, is going to need that 50-50 amendment and a good starter fertilizer. And then go out and check, at least if you're in the heat of the summer, at least once a day. If it's on automated irrigation system, do a second knuckle test. Put it down, put your finger down in that planting bed hole or in the container. If you find that you have moisture within that short little distance, you know that down underneath is still going to be moist and you're going to be a-okay. So let the plant dictate to you when you're going to water, and allow for the variables depending on the ambient temperatures. Now this time of year in late November, chances are you're not, unless you're in deep zone 10, zone 11, you're probably not going to be watering very much at all. Plants even down there are going into kind of a semi-dormancy and everything's slowing down for the rest of the short daytime hours that are left. So we're really cutting back on water. Up north, yeah, I don't even need, unless you're in a greenhouse or something, you're not watering whatsoever. So know your plant, know your soil, and let the plant dictate to you how much water it's going to need. Once you learn that, you're golden and you'll be able to move on with a good, productive landscape. Okay, question number 3 has to do with retaining walls. Can DIYers build their own retaining walls? Absolutely you can. The 2 types of retaining walls that I would suggest you focus on is wood and stackable block. If you get into the concrete, poured concrete thing again, then you have some really technical type of forming up, wire ties, lots of rebar, etc. to get that vertical slab to stay in place. And then you have the finishing on the outside where you really have to pay attention to tapping it out and getting all the air pockets and everything out of it. So for DIYers, wood, stackable block. I'd prefer you go with stackable block because it's easily attainable. That first course is everything and you're basically home free. And don't forget to put drainage behind the wall if you have a slope that's 3 feet or higher. Most of the time, DIYers can do their own retaining walls from 4 feet or less as an average. There may be some jurisdictions that have 3 feet or less, but most of the time it's 4. And then make sure that that drainage tile is in the back. You cover it with gravel, you have a sediment sock on it, and you make sure that it has the correct slope. And any DIYer with half a brain will be able to think their way through it and get it done right. Just remember that base layer. If you're doing it out of wood, you're going to need some reinforcement to stick back into that hillside called a dead man, and you can put those on there and finish up the wall itself. Most of the time we're done out of 6x6s, 8x8s, railroad ties, etc. And you end up with a wall that's going to last. On the hillside, what I used to do when I built them out of wood, I would take a 30-pound felt, a roofing felt, and tack it to the inside and then put my drainage down below. And it kept the moisture and stuff away from the wood, some of the wood-eating organisms that are out there, termites and whatnot, and it really stretched the longevity out for many, many years. Out west, we generally use cedar and redwood. Now that stuff is so darn expensive, I'm not sure what people are using. But in any case, make sure you wood preservative, you treat it, and take care of it as much as possible. So darn right, DIYers can put in their own retaining walls. If you have a very long uphill that you're trying to retain, you may have to put in more than one hill and kind of terrace it a little bit. And that way you can control the hillside and control the water all at the same time. And don't forget, check out the playlist if you'd like. There are several retaining wall videos in there, both educational and also what's wrong with them. So you check those out if you got a few minutes. Okay, question number 4 is, I see this a lot from people, and I see it a lot on Reddit because people on Reddit, great questions out there, but there's always the people that want a lot of free advice, and they generally title their little post, you know, so overwhelmed with this first house, what do I do with this yard? And I think a lot of the times over my career, I've had a lot of people come into the nursery, a lot of people that have called me for consultations and design work, and basically they're stuck because they're in that analysis paralysis. And I understand that not everybody has a a design background or a creative mind when it comes to horticulture and laying out. I get all that. So there is power and knowledge, and the way you're going to get that is reaching out to people that are within your immediate circle, if you know anybody, and reaching out to a professional, maybe like a landscape designer, just to do a master plan for you, and then you can take off with it and get a very good result based on what he or she has designed for you. You'll also learn quite a bit if you hire a designer. Some are contractors and designers, but not many. So some people know how to design stuff out, but they don't know how to build it. So in that case, make sure you do a little interview process. Maybe talk to 1, 2, or 3 and decide which one has the best chemistry and the ones that can walk you through it. And they want to spend some time because they want to see you succeed. So if you get stuck or overwhelmed, know how to reach out. Maybe do a little plot plan sketch. Take it down to your local nursery. Find out if they have a designer on staff, or at least somebody who's certified in the nursery capacity that have some design experience. They can at least point you towards some sun, some shade, some highs, some lows, and some ideas that start your creative juices flowing. And then once you decide on what you're going to do, maybe go back and patronize that nursery and give them the business because they gave you the education. Okay, moving on. Question number 5 is, I can't afford a professional landscape contractor. Do you know how much money they ask for? So what are some of my options? Your options are 2. Hire the pro or do it yourself. I mean, really, there isn't anything. But if you want to look at maybe a hybrid type of thing, it's where you get the design done. Maybe you subcontract, you being the general contractor, you subcontract out the part you don't know how to do. Maybe it's the hardscape portion. Maybe it's the design layout of the plants. Maybe it's lighting. Maybe it's something to where you do what you can do and then hire parts and pieces out to others while you supervise it. Make sure that you get the product that you want. Don't fall into the weekend warrior category where you start piecemealing it. You do this part of the house in March and you do that part of the house in April and you do this in August and you wait until next year to do the backyard. It's okay to do parts and pieces as long as you're adhering to a master plan, something that you've drawn up, something that someone has drawn up for you, and that you know if you're doing it because of money allocations or whatever, you're going to do it in a fashion that you're going to get that professional result rather than just kind of like, I feel like spending $500 on a Saturday, and you go down to the box store and spend a whole bunch of money on stuff. You plant up this area and there you go. And then you repeat that again 3 months later. Now, Weekend Warrior tends to look like a Weekend Warrior did it in the end. And there's nothing wrong with it if you're happy with it, but most people want to have something that looks a little cohesive, a little thought out, very congruent from front yard to backyard to side yards. So think about doing it that way, and oftentimes you don't have to pay the pro price, but you get a pro result in doing it that hybrid way. Okay, question number 6 is, if I got gutters, do I really need to have a drainage system as well? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, here's the caveat to that. If you're perched up on top of a hill and you have no gutter system whatsoever, like our house here, at Brook and Pond, we don't have a gutter system yet, but we will. And we do sit on top of a kind of a plateau, and the site work that was done here was done pretty darn well. It slopes away from the house pretty darn good, except for a few places. And so, yes, we will have a gutter system here next spring, for sure. But why do you still need a drainage system? You need to get the water not just down the downspout. You need to get it down the downspout and away from the dwelling itself. Whether you have a basement foundation, a slab foundation, whatever, you don't want that water continuously pouring there and softening up the subsoils where you could end up with shifting and any sort of water infiltration that might get through the slab itself. So make sure that you do a drainage system, probably at the very least if you just put a corrugated tail of 10 feet on the end of your downspout and run it that far away, but get it away from the dwelling and preferably go all the way to the end of the property if you can. The other thing is if you happen to have a slope where your house is at the bottom of a bowl, then it's really, really good to make sure you investigate sump pumps and have your gutter drainage, any sort of landscape drainage issues, drain to the sump, and then have the sump pump the water to a safe evacuation point. But drainage and water is probably in the top 2 destructive forces that go along with the deterioration of homes. And the better that you can manage that water, the longer and more productive your home is going to be for you and your family. Okay, last one, number 7. Is landscape fabric necessary or is it a scam? I will say this, over the course of 20 plus years, I have been around very good quality landscape fabric, especially as a contractor. I use the geotextile fabric for many, many years, where it's woven on top, furry on the bottom. It is expensive, but it lasts for a very, very long time. If you get the cheaper stuff, the stuff that is almost newspaper thin, it will not last that long. And for the most part, initially installed, the cheaper stuff tends to do its job. If I was going to make a suggestion that if you go the cheaper route, you might as well double and triple the layers in order to extend the longevity and the quality of that landscape fabric. I always used fabric underneath gravels and stones. I did not use it under mulch. So if I had a bark mulch or a compost mulch, I did not put weed fabric under that. But gravels, certainly. So where do the weeds come from? They come generally from the top. If you have mowing blows in the neighborhood, you have birds in the neighborhood, you have wind in the neighborhood, weed and their seeds tend to blow in on top. And most of the time, some weeds can establish and puncture through cheaper fabric. They could not puncture through the stuff that I had. It would germinate and go laterally, and it was very easily pullable. And I see that posted quite a bit, that it makes it really hard for the weeds to be pulled. Well, if you have the quality fabric to begin with, and you put it in correctly, and the medium that you have above the fabric is at least 2 inches, you're knocking out that pillar of 3 for anything to germinate. And the pillar of 3 is light, water, and nutrients. And so if you take away the light part of it, chances are it won't germinate. So a good maintenance practice is if you do have a landscape fabric with plants and other things up on top, decoratively done, you just have to go out once in a while and take care of your yard. And you have to either spray, the small stuff doesn't need spraying. Most of the time you can just hand pull them. And if they do get established, get on it and stay on it. That way your weed fabric is going to provide protection from underneath, and you provide the maintenance from up above. So those were like the top 7 that I pulled from a myriad of hundreds of questions, not only on the channel, but on other forums as well. And I hope you got a little bit out of it. If I did not address a particular question that you'd like to have answered, hey, drop it in the comments below, or you can email me anytime, youryardcoach@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to get back with you. Anyway, happy holidays, guys. I will see you next week. As always, to your landscape success. Bye for now.